The King's Royal Rifle Corps was an infantry rifle regiment of the British Army, originally raised in North America as the Royal Americans, and recruited from North American colonists. Later ranked as the 60th Regiment of Foot, the regiment served for more than 200 years throughout the British Empire. In 1966 the regiment amalgamated with the 1st Green Jackets and the Rifle Brigade to become the 2nd Battalion, Royal Green Jackets. History. The King's Royal Rifle Corps was raised in the American colonies in 1756 as the 62nd Regiment to defend the 13 colonies against attack by the French and the Native American allies. After Braddock's defeat in 1755, royal approval for a new regiment, as well as funds, were granted by Parliament just before Christmas 1755, hence the regiment's traditional birthday of Christmas Day. However, parliamentary delays meant it was the 4th of March 1756 before a special Act of Parliament created 4 battalions of 1,000 men each to include foreigners for service in the Americas. A regimental history compiled in 1879 by a captain in the King's Royal Rifle Corps states that in November 1755 Parliament voted the sum of £81,000 for the purpose of raising a regiment of 4 battalions, each 1,000 strong for service in British North America. Parliament approved an act to enable His Majesty to grant commissions to a certain number of foreign Protestants, who have served abroad as officers or engineers, to act and rank as officers or engineers in America only under certain restrictions and regulations. Quote, the Earl of Loudon, who as Commander-in-Chief of the forces in North America, was appointed Colonel-in-Chief of the regiment. About 50 officers' commissions were given to Germans and Swiss, and none were allowed to rise above the rank of lieutenant colonel. According to a modern history of the regiment, the idea for creating this unique force was proposed by Jacques Prévost, a Swiss soldier and adventurer who was a friend of the Duke of Cumberland. Prévost recognized the need for soldiers who understood forest warfare. Unlike the regulars who were brought to America in 1755 by General Edward Braddock, the regiment was intended to combine the characteristics of a colonial corps with those of a foreign legion. Swiss and German forest fighting experts, American colonists and British volunteers from other British regiments were recruited. These men were Protestants, an important consideration for fighting against the predominantly Catholic French. The officers were also recruited from Europe, not from the American colonies, and consisted of English, Scots, Irish, Dutch, Swiss and Germans. It was the first time foreign officers were commissioned as British Army officers. The total regiment consisted of 101 officers, 240 non-commissioned officers and 4,160 enlisted men. The battalions were raised on Governor's Island, New York. The regiment was renumbered the 60th Regiment in February 1757 when the 50th and 51st Foot Regiments were removed from the British Army roll. After the surrender at Fort Oswego, among the distinguished foreign officers given commissions in the 60th was Henry Bouquet, a Swiss citizen, whose ideas on tactics, training and man management would become universal in the British Army some 150 years later. Bouquet was commanding officer of the 1st Battalion, and with his fellow battalion commanders, set about creating units that were better suited to warfare in the forests and lakes of Northeast America. The new regiment fought at Louisburg in June 1758, the Cape Sable Campaign in September 1758 and Quebec in September 1759 in the campaign which finally wrested Canada from France. At Quebec it won, from General James Wolfe, the motto Salary or Dax. These were conventional battles on the European model, but fighting during Pontiac's War in 1763 was was of a very different character. The frontier war threatened the British control of North America. The new regiment at first lost several outlying garrisons but finally proved its mastery of forest warfare under Bouquet's leadership at the victory of Bushy Run in August 1763. The 60th were uniformed and equipped in a similar manner to other British regiments with red coats and cocked hats or grenadier caps. But on campaign, swords were replaced with hatchets, and coats and hats cut down for ease of movement in the woods. Napoleonic Wars. During the Napoleonic Wars, the regiment saw action in the Peninsular War. The first 4 battalions had been raised as regular line battalions, but in 1797 a 5th battalion had been raised at Cowes on the Isle of Wight and equipped entirely with the Baker rifle, and wore green jackets with red facings. The mixing of rifle troops and muskets proved so effective that eventually line battalion light companies were replaced with rifle companies. The line battalions found themselves in several different theatres, including the West Indies. The rifle battalion was soon joined by a second, and these found themselves in the Peninsula with Wellington's army, serving along with the 95th Rifles, and the King's German Legion rifle units. A 7th battalion was eventually raised as a rifle battalion specifically for service in the American War of 1812, Anglo-Egyptian War and Second Boer War. After the Napoleonic Wars, the regiment received a new title. First, in 1815, its name was changed to the Duke of York's Own Rifle Corps, and then, in 1830, to the King's Royal Rifle Corps. In 1858, the Rifle Depot at Winchester was made the headquarters. The regiment served in the Anglo-Egyptian War in 1882. During the rest of the 1800s, the unit also was active in China, Canada, Afghanistan, India, Burma and South Africa. The regiment was deployed during the Second Boer War from the outset, playing a key role in the first battle at Tulana Hill. 2 officers from the regiment were awarded the Victoria Cross: Lieutenant Frederick Hugh Shurston Roberts and Lieutenant Llewellyn Albrecht Emilius Price Davies. Private Frederick Corbett also received the Victoria Cross for his action at Kafr Daour, Egypt, on 5 August 1882. His VC was later rescinded when he was convicted of embezzlement, theft, and being absent without leave. First World War Regular Army. The 1st Battalion landed at Rouen as part of the 6th Brigade in the 2nd Division in August 1914 for service on the Western Front and saw action at the Battle of Mons in August 1914, the First Battle of the Marne in September 1914, the First Battle of the Aisne in September 1914, and First Battle of Ypres in October 1914, as well as the Battle of Festubert in May 1915, the Battle of Loos in September 1915, and the Battle of the Somme in autumn 1916, before taking part in the advance to the Hindenburg Line. The Battle of Arras in November 1917, the Battle of Cambrai in November 1917, the Second Battle of the Somme in autumn 1918, and the Battle of the Selle in October 1918. The 2nd Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 2nd Brigade in the 1st Division in August 1914 for service on the Western Front and saw action at the Battle of Aubers Ridge in May 1915. The 3rd Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 80th Brigade in the 27th Division in December 1914, for service on the Western Front and saw action at the 2nd Battle of Ypres in April 1915. The 4th Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 80th Brigade in the 27th Division in December 1914 for service on the Western Front and saw action at the 2nd Battle of Ypres in April 1915, but moved to Salonika in November 1915 before returning to France in June 1918. Territorial Force. The regiment did not have any Territorial Force battalions. new armies. The 7th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 41st Brigade in the 14th Division in August 1914 for service on the Western Front and saw action the Second Battle of Ypres in May 1915, the Battle of Delville Wood in July 1916 and the Battle of Flers-Courcelette in September 1916, as well as the advance to the Hindenburg Line, the Battle of Arras in April 1917, the Battle of Langemarck in August 1917, the First Battle of Passchendaele in October 1917 and the Second Battle of Passchendaele in November 1917 before taking part in the Battle of St. Quentin in March 1918 and the Battle of the Havre in April 1918. The 8th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 41st Brigade in the 14th Division in May 1915 for service on the Western Front and saw action most of the same battles as the 7th Battalion. The 9th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 42nd Brigade in the 14th Division in May 1915 for service on the Western Front and saw action most of the same battles as the 7th and 8th Battalions. The 10th Battalion and 11th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 59th Brigade in the 20th Division in July 1915 for service on the Western Front and saw action at the Battle of Mont-Sorel in June 1916, the Battle of Delville Wood in July 1916 and the Battle of Guillemont in September 1916, as well as the Battle of Flers-Courcelette in September 1916, the Battle of Morville in September 1916 and the Battle of La Transloy in October 1916 before taking part in the advance to the Hindenburg Line, the Battle of Longmarck in August 1917, the Battle of the Menin Road Ridge in September 1917, the Battle of Polygon Wood in September 1917 and the Battle of Cambrai in November 1917. The 12th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 60th Brigade in the 20th Division in July 1915 for service on the Western Front and saw action most of the same battles as the 10th and 11th Battalions. The 13th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 111th Brigade in the 37th Division in July 1915 for service on the Western Front and saw action at the Battle of Morville in September 1916, the advance to the Hindenburg Line and the Battle of Arras in April 1917, as well as the Battle of Passchendaele in autumn 1917, the Battle of Cambrai in November 1917 and the 100 Days Offensive in autumn 1918 before taking part in the battles of the Hindenburg Line and the final advance in Picardy. The 16th Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 100th Brigade in the 33rd Division in November 1915 for service on the Western Front. The 17th Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 117th Brigade in the 39th Division in March 1916 for service on the Western Front. The 18th Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 122nd Brigade in the 41st Division in March 1916 for service on the Western Front. The 20th Battalion landed at Le Havre as Pioneer Battalion for the 3rd Division in March 1916 for service on the Western Front. The 21st Battalion landed in France as part of the 124th Brigade in the 41st Division in May 1916 for service on the Western Front, but moved to Italy in November 1917 before returning to France in March 1918. 7 members of the regiment received the Victoria Cross. Interwar after 1918 the unit returned to garrison duties in India, Palestine and Ireland. In 1922 the regiment was reduced from 4 to 2 battalions, with the 3rd and 4th being disbanded. In 1926 the regiment was reorganized as one of the first mechanized infantry regiments. Second World War. The 1st Battalion was deployed to North Africa and saw action as part of the pivot group within the 7th Armoured Division at the Battle of Sidi Rezek in November 1941, the First Battle of El Alamein in July 1942 and the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942 during the Western Desert Campaign. Rifleman John Bealey of the 1st Battalion was awarded a posthumous Victoria Cross for his actions during Operation Crusader in North Africa. Following the Normandy landings in June 1944, the 1st Battalion served in the 4th Armoured Brigade. The 2nd Battalion landed in France as part of the 30th Infantry Brigade in the 1st Armoured Division within the British Expeditionary Force in May 1940, but was lost at the defence of Calais, where the brigade slowed the German advance and enabled the Dunkirk evacuation to proceed. It later took part in the Battle of Gazala in May 1942 and the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942 during the North African Campaign, before participating in the Normandy landings in June 1944 and the Northwest Europe Campaign. The 7th Battalion also landed in France as part of the 30th Infantry Brigade in the 1st Armoured Division within the British Expeditionary Force in May 1940 and was also lost at the defence of Calais. The 9th Battalion was deployed to the Mediterranean Theatre as part of the 1st Armoured Brigade in the 7th Armoured Division and saw action in the Greek campaign in April 1941 before being disbanded in August 1942. Royal Green Jackets. In 1948, for administrative purposes the KRC was brigaded with the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry and the Rifle Brigade to form the Green Jackets Brigade. In 1958 the regiment was retitled the 2nd Green Jackets, the King's Royal Rifle Corps, while the 2 other regiments of the Green Jackets Brigade were retitled the 1st Green Jackets and 3rd Green Jackets, the Rifle Brigade respectively. In 1966 the 3 regiments were amalgamated to form the 3 battalions of the Royal Green Jackets. Territorial Battalions. Queen Victoria's Rifles. The Rangers. The Queen's Westminsters. In the Second World War these territorial battalions were made formally part of the KRC as follows: 1st Battalion Queen Victoria's Rifle, 7th Battalion KRC, 2nd Battalion Queen Victoria's Rifles, 8th Battalion KRC, 1st Battalion The Rangers, 9th Battalion KRC, 2nd Battalion The Rangers, 10th Battalion KRC, 1st Battalion The Queen's Westminsters, 11th Battalion KRC, 2nd Battalion The Queen's Westminsters, 12th Battalion KRC. Cadet Battalions. There were 2 cadet battalions, 1st Cadet Battalion, the King's Royal Rifle Corps and Queen Victoria's Rifles Cadet Corps. Over the years the formation of the cadet battalions was changed regularly, due to the changes to do with rules and commanding officer. The 1st Cadet Battalion owes its foundation to the Reverend Freeman Wills, who was commissioned into the Volunteer Army in the rank of captain on the 26th of July 1890. He was also vicar of St Agatha's just behind Sun Street, Finsbury Square. On receiving his commission he decided to form a cadet company within the 1st Cadet Battalion, the Royal West Surrey Regiment. The company quickly expanded to become the 2nd Cadet Battalion, the Royal West Surrey Regiment, at which point he moved the battalion headquarters to No. 2 Finsbury Square. In 1894 he applied to H.R.H. Prince George, Duke of Cambridge, Colonel-in-Chief, to affiliate to the regiment, with the title of 1st Cadet Battalion, the King's Royal Rifle Corps. Consent was granted on 8 November 1894, and the battalion has remained a part of the regiment ever since. In the days of its foundation, cadet battalions were privately organized and funded. On becoming a part of the King's Royal Rifle Corps, subscriptions began to flow in, and after the commanding officer had spent nearly £1,000, the battalion was placed on a financial basis, which many volunteer corps would have envied. There were to be many ups and downs in later years, especially when recognition of the cadet force was withdrawn between the two world wars. But fortunately, the enthusiasm and commitment of those involved consistently triumphed over the parsimony of governments. In 1900, when volunteers were urgently needed for the Second Boer War, the commanding officer, Colonel Freeman Croft Wills, persuaded the War Office to accept a company of the older cadets, principally N.C.Os, the company being enrolled in the City Imperial Volunteers. Around 100 cadets thus served in South Africa with this unit, whilst other cadets and ex-cadets served in the Royal Army Medical Corps and other units. 4 were killed in action, one serving with the 1st Battalion King's Royal Rifle Corps at the Battle of Dundee, and the others with units of the CIVs. Their comrades erected brass plaques in their memory in the drill hall at Sun Street. These are now displayed in the Cadet Company office here at Davies Street. In recognition of this service, King Edward VII granted the battalion the honour of wearing on its accoutrements the Battle Honour, South Africa 1900–1902. The announcement of this privilege was made to the battalion by His Majesty King George V, then Prince of Wales, when, accompanied by Her Majesty Queen Mary, he distributed the prizes at the Guildhall in the City of London. The 1st Cadet Battalion King's Royal Rifle Corps are the only cadet unit in the United Kingdom to have been granted such an honour and are permitted to wear the miniature 60th cap badge with the single battle honour, and call the cadets riflemen. The 2nd Cadet Battalion, the King's Royal Rifle Corps, was formed in 1942 when a Home Guard instruction was issued ordering each Home Guard battalion to raise a cadet unit. Lieutenant Colonel R.L. Clark of Queen Victoria's Rifles was given the task, and on 15 May 1942 the Queen Victoria's Rifles Cadet Corps was born. Over the next 3 years the unit expanded to 5 companies, which in April 1945 led to it being retitled the 2nd Cadet Battalion, the King's Royal Rifle Corps. In 1951 the 1st and 2nd Cadet Battalion were amalgamated. This resulted in the disposal of the headquarters of the 1st Cadet Battalion at 42 Sun Street. In 1954 the battalion office of the new 1st Cadet Battalion was established at 56 Davies Street, where it remains to this day. Today the KRC 1st Cadet Battalion still exists, with the following units making up the battalion: a company, 231 KRC Rifles ACF, B Company, 232 KRC Rifles ACF, C Company, 233 KRC Rifles ACF, D Company, 234 KRC RGJ ACF, until recently when they formed the London Oratory School RGJ ACF unit, although they were rebadged as Irish Guards in 2010. Alliances: Canada, the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada,